Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We had a number of quite rowdy speeches before the dinner break on this bill, the Kaipara District Council bill, and I'm referring to the very senior politician as the leader of New Zealand First. And I do want to get back to the serious nature of this debate. And there's no question that the Select Committee, Local Government and Environment Select Committee, which I sit on, has had a very lengthy consideration of this bill. It has been on the committee agenda for a long time, and the committee members wrestled very hard with this legislation because nobody was very enthusiastic about retrospective legislation, and we were presented with no real good options. Every option was painful to some degree, and we heard with great concern the stories and real concerns of ratepayers, particularly in Mangawhai, who felt that very inappropriate things had happened on the council. Spending had ballooned out of control, and they were concerned that this legislation might in some way validate acts that were illegal or inappropriate. And so there was a long, painful process of teasing out what indeed was the reality that we faced and the narrow nature of this bill. And I do want to make special mention of my colleague Mike Sabin, the MP for Northland, who shepherded this bill through the House in a manner that was forthright and straight up and down, as we would expect from a straight shooter from Northland. And there's been no doubt. There's been no doubt that he has indefatigably defended the interests of all the ratepayers and people in the Kaipara area, and tried to navigate his way through what has been a very difficult issue. So the options that we had was to weed out and to differentiate between acts of omission on the part of the council, which were legal acts of rating, which were done in where the I's and the T's hadn't been crossed properly and the legislation hadn't been dealt with, and separating that from anything that was more broadly an issue of concern. And then we were faced with the other option, which was to do nothing, not pass the bill, and then perpetuate a problem where a wider set of ratepayers in the region were left carrying the can, while a smaller group went on strike, largely on a point of principle. And that, it seemed to us, when we drilled down to the issue, it became clear that the longer we delayed this legislation, the more costs were being piled onto the local council and effectively to the wider set of ratepayers, and that was becoming intolerable. So after much agonising, we decided unanimously, although it appears New Zealand First has drifted off in another direction, but nearly unanimously we agreed that this bill made sense. So if we could just go through some of the details. The bill authorises both rates and penalties added to rates to be recovered, as is normal for local government validation legislation. And we have before the House not just this piece of legislation at the moment, but also one in the Tasman area. And nobody takes any, nobody is enthusiastic about this legislation. And it does raise the broader issue of whether, just how effective councils are being in navigating their way through what is very complicated requirements and legislation. And, if anything comes out of this whole episode, it is I think we do need to think carefully about just how many sets of hurdles that we put in front of relatively small local councils and expect them to do everything perfectly. and whether that, there are two sides of the equation. One is that you expect councillors and councils to do an effective job in raising rates, which is one of the most important functions that they have, but we also don't want to have legislation that is overly complex and makes it difficult to achieve perfection. But the Select Committee, when we heard all the submissions from various parties, both in Mangawhau and in Auckland, recommended amending Clause 6 to ensure that penalties can only be charged if they would have been added to rates validated under this bill, because there was widespread concern that that some of the penalties were on the heavy side for people who had been caught up in this, and there was a long argument about that, but I think to the collective wisdom, again guided by the practical, pragmatic, no-nonsense approach of Mike Sabin, brought us to a situation which I think has the best chance of getting a sustainable outcome for this community and the wider region. If I move on, some committee members felt that some more of the penalties would have been remitted, and again we thought about that carefully. The commissioners appointed at the request of the council in 2012 have agreed to take a proposal to council in which certain penalties will be forgiven if the bill is enacted in this calendar year. And the importance of enacting this bill in this calendar year is that, as we were told by the commissioners, with each passing month and each passing 2 or 3 months, more and more cost was being put on at the feet of ratepayers, and particularly if it meant that they were unable to successfully claim some of the regional roading subsidies that are available. So penalties applied in the 2013 calendar year, as well as penalties due to be applied on the 1st of January 2014, will be remitted under this proposal. When I drill down further into the specifics, the bill validates the following. It validates rates, specified rates set either inconsistently, Mr. Speaker, with Council's funding impact statement, and or not allowed for under the Local Government Rating Act. B, it treats all money received by the Council in payment of the specified rates or penalties added to those rates as having been lawfully paid. And C, it authorises the Council to recover any part of the specified rates and any penalties added to those rates that remain unpaid. And it also validates the information contained in the rates assessments for the financial years relating to 2006/2007 to 2012/2013 inclusive. It also, when we looked at the long-term plan and annual report, validates other actions or omissions by the Council relating to the continuation of its 2006 Development Contributions Levy, the late adoption of its annual report for the 2011 and 12 financial year, and its long-term plan for 2012 to 2022, and its conduct of the special consultative procedure for its long-term plan for 2012 to 2022. And none of these things were handled particularly well by the Council, but again, the committee was left with those series of difficult choices, and we plumbed for correcting those inadequacies. Finally, the absence of doubt in terms of accountability, this clause was amended to make it clear that any person, not only the Kaipara District Council, has the right to bring proceedings, because a number of submitters were concerned that if we passed this legislation, then they would be left with no ability to hold people to account for wider acts of omission, and particularly the quality of the spending on the wastewater plant or the lack of quality of that spending. And we were very concerned to hear from the Auditor General as a result of its work, but also in the wider investigation of the quality of that decision making, that we didn't, by this legislation, make it impossible for people to hold those people to account for those actions. Now, there's no question that the Kaipara District Council, Mr. Speaker, has had a difficult few years. As well as the rating irregularities, the Council presided over what has proved to be a very controversial Mangawhai sewerage scheme and a considerable increase in debt. And this bill does not stop, as I said, the proper scrutiny of those decisions, nor does it absolve anyone of responsibility or culpability And if we go back, we note that the commissioners were appointed by the Minister of Commerce, Minister of Local Government at the request of the Council in September 12, and this bill does not impinge in any way on several inquiries underway, particularly the inquiry by the Office of the Auditor General into the Eco Care Sewerage Scheme. So, all in all, Mr. Speaker, this bill has been a difficult one for the Select Committee. We wrestled with it. We do congratulate the MP for Northland, Mike Sabin, who was left to carry this burden and did it with good grace. And I commend this bill to the House. Thank you very much.
Debate has concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 in favour.
The ayes are 112, the noes are 8. The motion is agreed to.
Kaipara District Council Validation of Rates and Other Matters Bill, second reading.
This bill is set down for committee stage next sitting day, and we call now on members' order of the day number 1.